We have just a few minutes for questions from the Twitter sphere. Jesse, what do we have?
Yeah, so I thought it's only fair to reward you guys for sitting here so long with the question to make it worthwhile. I guess the easiest summarised one came down to who defines what the creepy line is. Who's got agency in that, making that definition of where the creepy line is in how data is used?
Don't we do? I think what Vic said in her talk really rang true to, I guess, the message ultimately is that we have to learn how technology can assist us and how to manage that. We hop in our cars and we decide where to drive and how fast to drive. Maybe not so much in the future, but at the moment we make those controlling decisions, and I think ultimately it's up to us, and it's up to us to do that for our children as well.
I would agree with that. I'd build on that a little bit. So I think as consumers, we need to better understand what's going on, but as brands, we need to better understand our consumers. And you'll note that most businesses have a value now that's about being audience aware or audience obsessed. And that's what I think businesses are trying to do ultimately, better understand this space, because it does come down to us as consumers.
Thank you. Moving on to Vic.
Yeah, so Vic, I'm just moving through my notes. There was a fair bit of stuff going on.
Just so you know, I've been inundated with cat videos on my Twitter.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so did I. I got a little bit distracted, actually, while you were speaking, so it was hard to keep up. But one question that I thought was interesting, and it's a bit of an extrapolation and quite pertinent to the audience here, is does anyone know of a case where foam has hurt a patient?
Where foam?
Foam, we're using foam resources, because this has been something since the first smack that has been levelled as a big concern, that people are going to stupidly go off and follow.
It's probably not a case report someone's going to write up, so we may not know about it. I think it's a much bigger question, isn't it? I think how people come to any decision will probably come from a variety of sources, some reputable, some to do with the people around us. I'm not aware of a direct, and it would be hard to prove a direct relationship, but I think the more pertinent point is once things do become more freely available and once the barrier to access is lowered, all a good thing, but then the downside of that is that the quality that gets over that bar is potentially lowered.
I see a theme emerging. The onus is on the consumer.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, I mean, I actually did have a comment about what you said. I mean, I totally believe that about the cars, but the reality is, you know, someone still puts the roads where they are and still says this is how fast you're allowed to drive. And I know there was also a comment about electronic health records, and sometimes we can do certain things as individuals, but there are also constraints around those who set some of the rules.
Yep. I think you unveiled your feeling around the electronic medical records, which was one of the other questions, suggesting that maybe it is a source for learn retrospectively how we go about doing our business. So that was good. And Laura, you're happy for me to take one for Laura? So some of it, I guess it boiled down to, you were saying certain techniques, the wire technique should possibly be dropped off. There was a little bit of clarity being sought around whether your registry data included paediatrics as well, and whether they were separate, whether they had different outcomes around devices.
Right. So in pediatrics, it's a mixed bag, as pediatrics always seems to get the short end of the stick when it comes to things like this. So as of this morning, we have 9 pediatric cases, and I define that as 8 or less, 8 years or less. These were cannula techniques. They were terrible circumstances, and the survival rate was 2. Survived. Usually a foreign body, severe anaphylaxis, 1 trauma, I think. As a heads up, I think there is a new product coming online. It's been in Europe for 5 years now. I've been waiting for North America's the Ventrain device. I'm not sure if you have it here in Australia, but this may be a game changer for pediatrics, and I'll leave it at that.
Cool.
Very good. Thank you.
And Risa, so there's been a bit of a theme of electronic medical records and organisational stuff through the questions, but I think this question I'd frame it as challenges of reintegration of POCUS into electronic medical records and what infrastructure you have in your system for that. And secondarily, I guess just the integration of POCUS into your system, and how do you get that up and going and rationalise it?
John has joined me in many conversations, meetings, surveys, committee. We've done talking about this for a long time, and there's no one solution. Part of it is that in the US, there are two big companies that sort of dominate the emergency medicine record, and they're sort of late to even being aware of how to document and integrate ultrasound. Couple that with many companies making many machines, couple that with rules and regulations for coding and billing. That's a sort of roundabout way of saying there's no one way that we've found that works for everybody in every hospital system. And what I'm doing right now is different than what everybody is doing right now. There are certain guidelines. There have been a lot of guidelines and policies that have come from emergency medicine in the United States that talk about how to set it up, but it's a little bit more theoretical, and the actual granularity becomes hospital specific.
Very good. Well, we've managed to finish on time. I just wanted to thank all of our panelists for sharing all of your insights with us today. I don't know if we've settled the debate, technology versus learning, but as I think Vic said, we need to learn how to use technology in a smart way to better teach ourselves and to teach our students. So thank you, everyone, for being here.